I would have thought that would have made a little more important, but unfortunately, I don't think it is. But and that sucks. Related to military service, and all that, and then start thinking about weapons and items, figure out what
All right. Good evening. Wow, that's a low attendance today. I guess hopefully it's due to the project work. All right. So today, you guys started on Saturday with the testing framework and all those stuff. So I would like to spend a little bit more time on this topic. There are a couple of things that I want to show you. It might take an hour, maybe a little over an hour, but it's going to cut into, well, I don't like saying it's going to cut into your project time. You know, I was talking to people, you guys are already working on your project, should be working on your project anyway. So this time I'm going to spend some time on this, and I'll walk you through why it is important. It's kind of near and dear to my heart, and there's a reason for it. All right. So today what we are going to look at is called testing framework, testing your UI code or testing any code. Okay. Now, being honest, as software engineers, we hate testing. You know, anybody who's coding, we hate. I absolutely hate testing. And I didn't understand the purpose of unit testing or testing my own code. And I used to be like, well, that's what the QA is for, right? But as I matured in my career, as I wrote more code, I realized how important this is. And I will show you and I will walk you through some of those things. But this is a very important topic. When you're writing your code, you write some testing code that kind of tests your whatever you're writing. Okay. So I'm going to go over two of the most popular frameworks for UI, Mocha and Chai. You guys got a preview on Saturday. But let me tell you, you get a UI job, you get a front-end full stack developer job, you're working on any Angular, you're working on React or pure JavaScript. Mocha and Chai are most probably the framework that's the company you're going to be working with are going to be using. And the reason is these two are the more popular ones, and almost any company I've seen, they are using these two frameworks. There are a couple of more which are also very popular, but these two are more widely used, Mocha and Chai. Okay. The second thing I'm going to go through, it's not exactly part of the syllabus, but I think it's part of the testing and it's very important. It's called TDD. I'll go through what TDD means. And the last part is the API testing. Okay. So today there are some activities, but I'll live code them. You guys concentrate and kind of see how it is. And I'll post the solutions and you guys can see it. And then you guys, again, this is in the previous cohort, it used to be mandatory as a part of project that you need to add at least one unit test. But looking at the requirements for this project, I don't see it. They took it out. But it'd be nice if you guys can add some unit testing to your projects. We'll see how. I'll show you how to do it. Okay. Now let's start. First of all, Mocha and Chai you guys saw on Saturday. Just to give you a quick revision. Mocha is a testing framework, okay? And Chai is a library, is a testing library, okay? Now, you can only use Mocha and you can test your code and everything, but usually, most of the time, these two kind of go hand in hand together. Although they are written by different people, different organizations, kind of maintained by different people, but they kind of go hand in hand together. Okay. Now Mocha is a whole testing framework, and what Chai is what we call assertion library. Okay. Now what it means is the Chai gives you is a from their document. It's called natural language assertion. What it means is that you can read and write your test like it reads in English, right? They're kind of more understandable what I'm trying to do. So that's where Chai comes in. Mocha doesn't have that capability. It has its own thing, but they are not like as natural assertions as we talk and we converse. That's why Chai kind of plugs in and they kind of go together hand in hand, right? Again, if you're working anywhere, most of the time you will see Mocha and Chai testing framework going together. There are a few more, but I've seen these two widely used and more popular. Okay. What else? Okay. We'll see. I'll demonstrate. We'll do a warm-up activity, and I'll write the code. But before I begin writing this code out, there's a term called TDD. Okay. Again, this is really important, and it is important because these days I've seen in interviews, people, this is one of the favorite topics of interviewers. They ask a lot about unit testing and TDD. All right. Now, they will ask you about TDD and all unit testing stuff, but I've seen that the organizations that have asked about it, they kind of don't follow it. I mean, I've been places, I'm like, well, in my interview, you guys were going through it, there's everything should be tested and this and that, but when you get there, it's kind of poorly followed. Again, this trend is changing. We are trying to get there, and organizations, especially right now, I got hired and I had the same question. I was like, well, you guys tested me like anything, but I don't see there. Well, that's why we hired you, so that you can write these tests for us. So that's kind of funny. But TDD, you'll hear a lot, and I will tell you, in interview, it's just not coding. I have been asked, people have asked me to write unit test with the coding part and do a TDD demo or TDD coding. Okay, and I'll share how we go about it. But don't be surprised if you get asked in this in the interview. These are kind of popular topics, and people like to talk about it, even though they don't follow it. All right, so TDD. What TDD means is test-driven development. Okay, so you will be asked, hey, have you done TDD? And you will say, yeah, well, I kind of know it. The follow-up question would be, okay, what is TDD and how do you go about it? Okay, so the answer is TDD is test-driven development, and what it means is your development, which is your coding, is driven by test. Okay. What this means is, what do we usually do, right? We write our code and then we test it, right? But TDD is the opposite. You write the test first and then you write the code. Okay. So this is kind of the trend that everybody is going about. So in TDD, you write your test first and then you write your code that you are testing. Okay, it's kind of a little bit hard to grasp. How can I write my test first and then write my code? And we'll see. I have a good example. I'll show you how to do that. But TDD basically is this: you write your test first and then you write your code. Okay. Now, how does this TDD works? So first, you're going to write a test that fails. Okay. This is how TDD begins. So first, you write a test that fails. All right. Once that is failing, the second step is you fix the test with minimum effort. So once your test is failing, you have to look at your test and think, what is the minimum, what is the most shortcut can I do, can I write the code that will make my test successful. Again, logic, don't worry about the logic. You just have to pass. The goal on the second step is I have to make my test pass. I don't care what code I have to write. Usually it's like just one line or something. I have to write a minimum code that this test is going to be successful. Okay. The third, this was the second step. So I have to write minimum code that will make my test that was failing successful. Okay. Once my test is successful, that's when after that I refactor my code and then write my logic and everything and then continue the cycle again. Okay. You see how this works? TDD, you write the test first, make it fail. It should always fail the first time. Then you fix the test with minimum line of code, like minimum logic that will make that test successful. Okay. Is it going to be the right logic? No, it's not going to be the right logic. You are kind of hacking your way just so that you can make this test successful. Okay. Once this is successful, your third step is, okay, now you need to go and worry about writing the logic, all right, in your code. Okay, and this is TDD. Okay. Any questions or comments before we start? I'll show you a live example how we can walk through the TDD. Okay. This is kind of a little bit different from your regular unit testing, and when we get to the API testing, this would be more the conventional unit testing. So in the conventional, what we do is you write your code, and once your code is there, then you write your unit test, right? And we don't even do that also, right? It's kind of hard. I never wrote unit testing maybe like, I don't know, like 7-8 years ago. I just didn't believe, I mean, I didn't see the important part, but as I was saying, as I matured, as I wrote more code, and again, there have been more easier approaches now. We have like good testing frameworks like these. It's kind of easier to write those unit tests. I see the importance, and that's why I want to pass on out. These are important. Companies are realizing it, and you will see that now even in our company and the previous that I have worked with, you cannot push your code into production until you have a certain percentage of tests, and usually it's like 90% of your code should have a unit test, and you cannot hack your way through because there are sophisticated tools such as Sonar and a few more that kind of goes through your code, and they will check if you have written unit tests, right? What happens as soon as I check in my code, a pipeline runs, walks through my code, and kind of figures out what percentage of unit testing I have done in my code. If it is below 90%, I cannot push my code to production. All right. It's just not over here. It's kind of more common knowledge. I'm pretty sure a lot more companies are using the same tools. So it's kind of hard to get by not writing those unit tests now. Okay. All right. Any questions? All right. So this is the exciting part. So I'll code this, and you guys please concentrate on this because what happened to the mouse? Unfortunately, there is no separate lecture or anything about testing, as important as it is. But this is kind of part of it, so I'll try to cover, give you a little bit opportunity how the testing works, and you can apply this everywhere. It just depends what your use case is. But the coding and the concept are still the same. Okay? Questions? Good? All right. So let's see. So over here, the problem that we are given is we have a function called calculate tax. All right. You pass in a number, and then they have given the formula that it should return this. Okay. Pretty straightforward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve this using TDD. Okay. Now going back to a philosophy of TDD, I have to write a test that fails, then fix it, and then refactor my code. All right. We'll see how it works. All right. So if you look at let me look at this. I have a tax.js file empty. There's nothing. I have to write my code over here for calculating the tax. All right. I have a package.json. This should install my Mocha and Chai. Okay. And then I have my test over here. So let me open these two files. All right, so let's go ahead, and what I'm going to start with is I'm going to install this, run this package.json, so I have all the files. Okay. All right. Let me go ahead and close this. All right. So as part of, all right, here we are. TDD, I have to write a test first before I even begin writing my code. Okay. So following that, so I'm going to go through the Mocha and try. I'm not going to repeat it. So the syntax should look familiar, but I'll kind of try to go through it as much as I can. Okay. So the first thing is I already have my chai.expect. All right. All your tests begin with describe. Describe. Okay. So this is the part of the Mocha library, Mocha framework, describe, and it has two parameters. One is a string, and we'll see what that is, and then I have an anonymous function. Okay. Now in this describe, what by convention you can put anything, but what the convention, the kind of standard is, you write your function or your unit that you are testing. So over here I'm going to create a function that's going to be called calculate tax. Okay, so I'm testing that. So I'm going to say calculate tax. Okay, and then this will have all my tests that belong to my calculate tax function. Okay. Now what's going to be the first test? The first test I need to write that fails. My first test usually is if this function exists. Okay. The first test I want to see is it. I'm going to use the it same as previous, same as describe. So in my it, I will, this is kind of how it flows, like you're talking or you're conversing. So it should exist. Okay, what should exist? From line number 4, calculate tax method, every test is going to be on this. My first unit test is it. This means the calculate tax should exist. All right, so I'm testing if this method exists or not. What is the expectation? The expectation is that there should be a method called calculate tax. Okay, a function that should take one parameter, and it should take a number or a float. Okay, so I'll give some number, let's suppose 1. Okay, and what should happen? It should exist. .to exist. So what is to and exist? This is part of your chai library, and as I was saying, it's more like a natural language assertion. Now you can actually read it. It says describe calculate tax, my function. The unit test, what I'm testing for, that this function, it should exist. What is my expectation? That this function should be existing. Okay, it should exist. Okay, again, this is in the documentation. You can after this you can look at the chai documentation. It's kind of they've given some good examples, but once you kind of get into the habit of writing, it will be easier to code this out. But this is what it means. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. And what should be the expectation about this test? It should fail. npm run test. Okay. So I wrote my unit test. It says one failing. I wrote my first test and it fails. All right. That's my first part of my TDD. Okay. No code written. I have written my unit test which fails. Yes.
In your console, you write npm what?
Oh, npm run test. Oops.
Is that specific only to this framework?
No, npm run test kind of is common across. It's kind of smart enough to determine what you have, and it will run. It will go in this file and run your tests. It's called npm run test. We'll see how it is, but it's kind of looking into some specific files and folder, like the test one over here, goes in and finds this extension and then kind of run these tests. And if you look at your package.json file over here, this is what it mentions over here, this directory. So that's why it's kind of looking into that. Okay. Okay, so I wrote my test and it's failing. So my second step is I have to write, what do I have to do to make this test successful? What is the minimum thing that I need to do? Create that function. Okay, I just have to, I don't care about the logic. Right now my goal is that this function should exist. Okay, so let's go ahead in my tags.js file. Okay, I'll create a function, calculate tax, and it should take a argument. Let's call it price. Okay, so my function, I've created a function. So can I go ahead and run my test now? Should it be successful? What was that? Yes. It still gives me the same error. What was that? Exactly, it's not imported. Awesome. Oops, forgot my mouse today. All right, so I have to import this. All right. So, well, first I have to export this and then I'm going to import it. So I will say module.exports. Okay, and I will export this function. Okay. Anything else here? No, that should be good, right? Okay. And then I need to get this over here, right? So I will say let calculate tax require okay. Let's see where this is. Tax. Okay, this should be good. We change this to let true. Okay. All right, so I've imported. Now should it be successful? Oh, so I'm still missing something. Okay, looks like I'm still missing something. What am I missing? Am I missing the import here? No, it's not helpful. Let's see. Okay. So I have my test over here. It should exist. Expect. Let me go back and make sure. Oh, am I in the right directory? Text.js. Yep. Okay. Let's see what am I missing here. I have the describe, I have my If statement, this ends over here. Function expect to exist. Let's go back and make sure our node.modules installed. Yep, that's also good. Okay. Expect is there. Calculate tax passes in a function. Okay, let me see. You guys see anything that I'm missing? Looks like I have everything. I have the calculate tax. Doesn't seem like any typos here.
Expect function to throw error. Is that something you have to know?
Well, at this it should throw an error if it doesn't exist. But right now my test was failing, which is right. And then I went ahead and created my function and I imported it, and I did a require, I did a describe. Let's see. So this time it should actually say that it is it should be working, saying it exists. Let me see what if the error helps. npm run test. Unexpected undefined to exist. Okay, that's interesting. I don't think .js should make a difference, but try it and see if that helps.
Is test and tax on the same level?
They shouldn't be. That's a good point. So test is here, and it's above that. So that's why I did a // and then I went and did my tax.js.
If you put the parameter out, that'll work. I don't know if it's checking if it's a function.
Okay, let's try that. So take this out
Yeah, pick up another information.
completely.
Yeah.
Oops. Yeah, this might work, but yeah, it checks it, but what my concern is it's not actually checking the function.
To have a parameter, do you have to pass in a parameter when you're creating the function?
I thought I did. The price, yeah.
You can do callback functions like that, but I haven't specified parameters.
Without specifying it.
Like when you send some callback function out, you specify the parameters to do so.
Okay.
So it's probably the same concept.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's go with that. But I'm kind of still. Is it the? Okay. All right. So let's go with this. Okay. I'll test it out a little bit, and when we write a few more tests. Okay. Looks like it is. Yes.
You need to return something.
I need to return something. That's why.
It's like returning through.
Okay. Return. Let me put 1 because it's going to return a number eventually, right? Ah, that was it. Okay, that's better. Thank you. All right, so now I'm kind of satisfied because for this, I for sure know now it's checking my function and it's not checking if this module exists. Okay. All right, let's going back. So what did we do? The first thing we did, we wrote a test that fails, then we fixed it. Minimum bare requirement to fix this test was it should just exist. All right, I created an empty function. It works, and then there's nothing more else to refactor over here because the point over here was if it exists. Okay. All right. Let's do yes.
Quick question. So is it just general practice to have all of your tests just all in a separate file?
Yes.
Yep. Do you have like a separate file for different tests?
Right. Depending on what you're testing, I would suggest in this folder over here, create different files, as many as you can. So right now I'm just testing one module, which is my tax. So put a tax.test. If there is a second module that you are testing, create a new test and put it over here. And you will see it's a good habit right now because when you move into React, you will see that their boilerplate code already kind of separates everything out. So they have the intention is each module should be a separate test. Okay, good question. All right, so this is my first test and it looks good. I was able to successfully do it. Now the second, let's write couple of more tests. And this time what am I testing is I'm testing the functionality. So what I want to do is, let me create my it first. It's going to be the description of the test, and then I'm going to create an anonymous function that's going to have my test. Okay. Start with should. So what does my calculate tax function do? I pass in a number and it calculates what tax it is. Okay. It returns me a calculated tax. Okay. So I should say should add tax to an integer. Okay. So at this point, what I'm testing is if I pass a number, which is an integer, all right, no decimal points. If I pass in a number, it should calculate the tax and then return me something. Okay? So whatever the formula is, all right? So, so let's go ahead and say let result is equal to calculate tax, and let me open the calculator here. Okay, what if I pass in 4? If I pass in 4, based on this calculation, what should I get back? 4.32. All right, I will take that. 4.32. Okay, so let's go ahead and write my expect. Okay, my result should be equal to 4.32. Okay, so if I pass in 4, it should return me 4.32. I wrote my test. What's the expectation? The first one should be passing, the second one should fail. Okay, going back to the cycle, I wrote a test. I haven't written the code that should return me the right number, but it's failing, right, as expected. All right, so it says that I'm expecting 4.32, but I'm getting a 1 back. So the test is failing. Let's go and fix that test. Now, what is the minimum? How do I fix this test?
You just hard code them first 4 times.
Excellent. You guys heard that? Awesome. The minimum thing to barely pass this test is a hard code this number. And both are good. All right, this is our second step. Failure, fix the test with minimum amount of code. right? I hard-coded 4.32 and my test works, all right? So this is how you do TDD. Now we'll have to go and refactor and fix this, but this is the point of TDD, that you write your test first, fail it, and then you make it successful. So let's go ahead and refactor our code now to write the actual logic and all that stuff. So the formula it says should be price into 1.08. So what I need to do is price into 1.08. Okay. And then it says it should be 2 decimal places. So let's go ahead and use the 2 fixed dot 2 fixed. Okay, two decimal places. All right. Let's go ahead and run our test now. It should be successful. Oops. I don't have what?
We don't have a price. It's just multiplying number by number to
No, we are passing in our test, right? This thing. I'm passing in 4, and I'm trying to test it with this one. So it's it should be working. So that's not the error. If you see the error, what it is saying is it is, but you see what it is doing? It's kind of making a string. You need to, yeah, you need to convert it into a, like, kind of hard code that into like a number. So let's go back here. I think it is number. Let's try this. Let's see if this works. It should convert it into a number. Okay, yeah, that was it.
How is
Right.
that different than this person?
What was it? Yeah, it should be, yes. So you can't use parse and you will use parse float probably. Yeah, you can use this one.
I was just wondering why it was different.
Oh no, it's fine. This comes with I think this comes with Node.js. That's why I use it. But you can use parsing, yeah. Parse float, not parsing. Yes. Yep. All right. So it is successful. You're able to parse it, and this is how you do TDD. All right. Before I proceed, any questions on this? Let me see if there's something else. Yes. Any questions? All right, so guys, this is the important part of the TDD. This is how you do TDD, and I'm telling you from my experience. I have been asked this in interviews where they have asked me to do to showcase how the TDD works, and they've asked me to write the test first and then go to the coding part. All right. So this is how you TDD. Similarly, you can write a couple of more tests. The other test would be if I pass it. Right now, I'm passing an integer. If I pass in a decimal number, my test should test for that. You can write a test for that. The other test would be that if you pass in like A, B, C, D, something like an error. Let me quickly show that. So if you pass in a like something other than an integer, it should fail. I should throw an error basically, right? So it should throw an error for non-number. Okay. So you can write a test for that too. Oops. So basically what I am saying here is that expect when I do calculate tax, and instead of number I pass in some word through some kind of error. Oops. Okay, so you can write something like this also, like a test. This should fail because I haven't actually thrown an error. It's not checking anything, so we'll fix this. But this is your testing your failing conditions. So right now I wrote a test, and now I know that my code is faulty, as in like it's not doing any validation. It works for the calculation part, but it doesn't do the validation part. So I need to go and fix that. So this tells me, okay, I need to add some validations over here and throw an error. So there's a return. Let's see. It was a type of, right? You guys remember? Was it called type of? Okay. Let's do this. Okay. So if type of, yeah, price is not equal to, it's not a number, then I want to throw an error. So I'll say throw new error. Okay, and it has to match what am I expecting, not a number. Okay, so I'm going to pass the same message over here, not a number, not a number. Okay, well, let's make sure this is good. So I have, if the price is not a number, it should throw an error. Okay. Okay, so when you're throwing an error or even you're expecting, the syntax is a little bit different. How you check for an error, what you have to do is, again, I was reading this documentation over here for Chai, and you guys can look up the documentation, and they were saying if it is expecting an error, you need to wrap it up in a function call. Right? What does this mean is that all you have to do is the function that is expecting to throw an error, you have to do something like this, call function so what is it? This is just I'm creating a function and I'm wrapping this function inside this. Right? What I have to do is, instead of this, I call this function I do this, and then I call this function. Okay, again, this is the convention. If you are expecting your function to throw an error, what you have to do is you have to wrap your calling function in a dummy function. So that's what I did. Yes.
What is the point of that? Like, it just seems redundant.
It does, but that's how the framework or the library is built, and that's how the documentation said. Yeah, I think it might be because this thing, what is expect? Expect is basically a function too. I think it's the way that they have coded that if it throws an error, it's kind of not able to catch it. Yeah. But this is what the documentation was saying, that if you expect something to throw an error, wrap it up in a function and then call it. All right. I'll see if there's any specific more reasons why they have that written in that way, but we'll see. But right now, as for the documentation, if you are expecting an error, wrap it up in a function and then call it. All right, so I wrote my test. The first time it failed, then I went ahead, I fixed it with the bare minimum. Unfortunately, the bare minimum over here was that I need to throw an error, and after that, all my tests are good. Okay, so not only did I wrote my logic, I was able to kind of point out and kind of figure out that I'm missing some validations. Right, very important. When you're doing your projects, make sure this time all your validations are covered, and unit tests will kind of help you do it. All right. Before I open this up for questions, another thing over here is, if you see, I'm not running this. How can I run this function? If I wanted to run in my node, like if I wanted to do node space what is it, tax.js, will this run? It won't run. What do I have to do to make it run? Call it somewhere, or I have to do that process.argv, pass in like a number and do all that stuff, right? Unit test kind of helps me in this, that I'm writing my test also and I'm calling this function to see if it works without writing any extra code in my tax.js. All right, so there's like no redundant code, but kind of exists as a separate module, and then I can call this in my unit test, and whatever inputs I'm passing, kind of make sure that they're working. Okay, any questions? I'll post this. I'll push this to your GitLab. You can see the solution that is there. But this is how you do TDD. All right. To me, it was important. That's why I covered TDD. Again, it's kind of fairly asked question these days. You guys will probably encounter. So this is how you do TDD. In the next one, the example for API testing, the code is already written. I'm not going to write the whole code. And code for the APIs. So I'm going to show you how to write the test, but the APIs are already written. So it's kind of more like a unit test. It's not like TDD anymore because my code is already existing. I'm now writing my test. That's the other convention. That's also kind of common, and a lot of people kind of feel comfortable writing that. But again, the trend is kind of moving towards TDD, and this is how you do TDD. So make sure you guys kind of understand what TDD is, at least from the concept wise, even if you guys don't do this in your project. But for unit testing, please, I'll show you the API testing. Make sure you guys at least write a API test. Okay. All right. Any questions before we move on? Good. Everybody kind of gets the idea what TDD is. All right. Concept wise, you write your test first. Then you go ahead and write your code later on. All right, remember these 3 steps. Anybody asks in your interview, this is how you answer it. All right. All right. So let's see. Okay. So I'm going to show you. I'll write the test for the get. If you guys want after get, I can also write the test for post, or I can show you. We'll see when we get there. All right, how you guys are feeling. Okay, for this one, I'm going to use our project starter code. All right. What I'm assuming is I'm going to show you, because I don't have like an API project or anything, but this should give you an idea, especially if you guys are using the project starter code. If not, you still have APIs, so it should give you an idea how to go about it. Let me see. No, I don't want to update this. Okay. All right, so everybody good? I'm going to use the project starter. It has all the APIs kind of built in. If you guys are using it, you should have already seen it. Just to give you a quick overview, I have all my routes over here, and I have my API routes. All right, this is already built in. So what I'm doing is I have my APIs built out. I'm writing unit tests to test these APIs now. Okay. I'm hoping you guys are working on your project and you guys have at least one API by now. Hopefully you guys have written an API and calling it. If you have, after this class, you can write a quick test, unit test, and include it in your project also. But let's see how we write it. Okay. If you have not written an API till now, kind of time is running out. You still have like 2 weeks, especially with Thanksgiving. So kind of, you'll probably have to work on it a little bit. But let's see how do we write a test. So I'm using this. I already have my APIs built in. All right. So, and let's go back and see. So I already have a test folder. I'm going to write my test inside this. Okay. What else? I already have my known modules, so I already have all the installations done. So that should be good in my config.json. I have my development and my test. I'm using my local SQL, so I already have my password and everything set up over here. All right, so these should be good, so I don't have to modify any of those files. The only thing I need to check is make sure my SQL is running. I usually close this. Oh, I guess I forgot to close this. Okay. So I'm going to write my test inside this folder. Okay, let's see. Okay. All right, so I'm going to test my API route, which is, I'm going to start with my get one. So I'm going to test this one. This API route, what it does is goes to my examples database and gives me some examples basically. Okay, that's my expectation. Let me see if I have. Okay, yeah. So I already have my example DB created. Okay, let's see. I have a table called examples. Okay, and it has, let's see, basically two columns, text and description. ID is kind of auto-generated, so this is my table. Right, so I'm going to use this for my testing. So it should return me description and all that stuff. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a new file, example.test.js. Okay, so this is only my one route. If you had, I don't know, you had what was the codes API, so you will say codes.test.js, and every other API that you have, you're going to create a new test for that. Okay. All right, so I need my modules here. Yes, then never mind that. So I'm going to create my modules here. Oops. Required chai. Contact today. Okay. All right. What else do I need? I needed the expect one. Chai.expect library. I need my. What am I missing here? What? What is it? I thought I removed it. Man, I'm like so dependent on this auto intelligence. It's so much better in Java. Or IntelliJ, I should say. That's what I use. So this is correct now. Let's try unexpected token chai. Okay. Use IntelliJ over here or WebStorm. Let's see. I think I need a. Yeah, I need a server also. So I'm just going to. I need my models also. see. So this is server file. Okay. Why is it still complaining? Expected, unexpected token? No.
Isn't it supposed to be dot expect after?
Yeah, I got this.
No. Top
Line 1.
right there. Isn't that supposed to be a dot expect
Well, I created this separately. This should
Oh, I
be,
see.
yeah. I don't know. We'll see why it's complaining. I need my database. Okay, so I'm going to. So all of these require are based on this project. Again, you guys see what you guys need and then call your. I'm just declaring this whatever there is. Okay, so I'm missing one library, and that's the more important one. So now we are testing our APIs, and our APIs are over HTTP. Okay, so the frameworks that you guys have been looking at on Saturday and today, and the warm-up activity that I did are all for your individual modules that do not require an HTTP. Okay, so Chai comes with a special module. If you're testing your APIs, it's called Chai-HTTP. So I'll show you what it's called. Require Chai-HTTP. Okay, so this is the module that you're going to use to test out our APIs. Okay. All right, let's go ahead. I'm going to set this up. Oops. So when you're testing your APIs, you tell the main module that you're going to be using this one, okay, for our testing purposes. Again, this is required when you're doing your API testing. All right. Okay, let's see. It's kind of weird why my linter is kind of complaining about this. Still don't understand. Parsing error. But I'm using let everywhere else. No. Yeah, maybe I'll go in the. Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll use it later on. Linter. Okay. What's the error over here? Oh, it doesn't like the pretty print. It's probably, you know what? It's going to like this. Huh? Like this. Oh my God! Why am I wasting my time with the way? Oh, I need to move on. Let's see what this is. Fix this. Oh. It just needed a end line. All right, so let's get back to it. Sorry, my OCD sense was not letting me go forward. All right, so I have all the necessary things over here. We'll start with the same thing, like all our tests begins. Start with describe. If I can spell it. Describe ended. Name. Function. Okay. All right. So what am I testing over here? I'm testing my get, all my gets. Okay. I'm testing all my get routes over here in this one. So I'll say I'm testing my get API / examples. You can write a description, it's up to you guys. Okay, now before we start testing or writing a test for this, we need a few things to be set up before we can run. As you guys see, if you guys are running your API, what should be present? Your database connection should be there, your Node.js should be running, and all that stuff, right? It's the same setup over here. You need to write some basic setup so that your test can also run. So what you need is before each, execute before each test case. Okay, so in your before each, all your initial setup goes in. We'll see what that setup is. It takes an anonymous function. Okay, so let's see what do I need. So I'm looking at the documentation. It says I need to create a request. I need to say try.request. Alright, so okay, again, these are the preconditions that you need to fulfill before you can run your test. You can copy paste the same thing, just change whatever your code has, but what you need to do is you need to set up a request. Let me see if I created a variable request. Yes, I didn't. Let me say var request. Okay, we'll see how this is being used, and then I need to do a database connection. So I have to do, and it should return me some kind of, so I have my db variable db.sequelize, and then if you guys remember, the method to start the database was sync, right? And then I'm going to say here that, you know, every time create a new database. Okay, go ahead and format this and see. All right, any questions so far? Again, this is just the basic setup, and this is coming directly from the documentation. It's nothing that I came up with. What we are doing is we are setting up a request, and then we are setting up our database for this test. Okay, so that we can run our get testing. Okay, so you guys will follow the same standard, same code. After this, now I can begin writing my test. And how do I begin my test? I say it. All right, and this, what am I testing? And my anonymous function. Okay. All right, so it should get all examples. Okay, when I call this API, it should give me all my examples. Whatever is in the database should return me all. It should return me a list of examples. Okay, that's what I'm testing for. All right. So, are there any rows in my database right now? It's empty. Okay. And when you are testing, you will never have any rows, or at this point there won't be anything in your database, and that's not what you're testing. You are never connecting to your real database. Remember that in your unit testing, you are never connecting to your real database. Everything is mocked up. You are mocking something. You're mocking your data set also, and you're testing against that data set. You're never going to connect to your real database. Okay, keep that in mind and see what should happen. So since we are not connecting to our real database, we need something in our database, in our mock database. So how do you do it? What you do is you say db dot, and my model was called example. If you go back over here, in your models folder, right? I have an example one. You guys should have your own models over here. Okay, so whatever your model name is, I'm saying go to my model and add some rows. Okay. Now, what were the methods that we saw? There was a create method to add some rows in your database, and that's what we are going to do. We are going to add some data in our database, but that's all fake data. It's not going to actually insert into our database. I'm going to insert some rows, so I'm going to use the bulk create method that comes with our SQLize. And I'm going to insert some rows here. So this takes an object. Okay. So my columns are some kind of text. I'm going to say first example. Okay, and my second column was description. I'm going to just say first description. Okay. Same thing over here. I'm just going to copy paste. I will say my second example. Oh, I forgot my dot then. To finish this, we'll see what goes in my dot then. Let me go ahead and format this. Okay. Okay. Again, this is db.example.create bulk create. You guys should be kind of familiar with this when you guys are using SQLize, connecting to your database and creating some rows. It's the same method. This it has an extra one, bulk create. It lets you create more than one rows, or you can use your create method. It's up to you guys. But over here, I'm creating dummy rows in my database, and then I'm adding those over here. Okay. Let me finish my then function. Okay, it takes an anonymous function, and this is where my code is going to go. Okay, so at this point I created a couple of rows, and I'm going to test if when I call this API, it should return me these two rows. All right. Again, going back, this is how you write. You start with your describe, and then you set up your database and your request, and then you start writing your test saying whatever the test is. You create some sample rows, and then you write your test in the then function. Okay, same convention. You guys can follow exact same thing. All right. So let's go ahead and start with my request. I'm doing a get. Okay. Dot end. To finish this. Okay. Again, I will upload this code. I'm just writing it out. You guys can use the same copy pastes and use the same thing. Just understand what's going on. So I'm now creating my request. I'm like going to call this function and then see if it returns me the correct response. So how do I call my API? The URL is /API/examples. So I'm going to call this, and my end function in my end. It's kind of the promise method. My end should have the result of this error and some kind of a response, or some kind of a result. Okay. Again, this is also from the documentation. If you want to test your API, what you do is you do a request or get. If it's a post, we'll see. I'll show you the post code also. But right now it's a get, and you put in your API. And then you do a dot end, which means that at the end, what should happen? We'll see what should happen. Okay, at the end, I should have a response status. It should be in my response status. Okay, in this variable, in my response variable, it's an object, so I'm getting few properties. Let's see what those properties are. The first is the status property. What is the status? It's the HTTP code, 400, 200, 404, all those stuff. Okay. And the second is the body. So I will say var response okay. So let's go ahead and see what should be ES6 true. Oh, okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, yeah, that's what I was going to look up, how to check this. Well, I'm going to write my test and make sure guys understand what am I doing here. What is happening in line number 30? Expect ERR to be null. Alright. So this is my successful test. Yeah. So if there is any error, I want my test to fail. Alright. I'm testing for the good case. I'm testing that my API is good. I'm able to run it and it's returning me something. There shouldn't be any error. Alright. So the first test that I'm running over here, I'm saying before you proceed, check for the error. Okay, it should be null. If it is not, the code is going to break over here. All right. The next thing that you can check is that expect your response status to equal. What should it equal to? Your response status. Huh? Now 200. Should be equal to 200. If it is successful, your API call is successful, it should return a 200. Alright? If it doesn't return 200, I want my test to fail and stop over here. I don't want it to go further because, of course, there's an issue. Alright? My other one, expect my response body. What is in my response body? If I call this API, I'm getting a list, right? I'm getting an array of objects with my text description, all the rows. Okay, so my response body should be .to be. Again, I'm not. Let me show you this thing. Do I have this here? This is the documentation for Chai, which I'm referring to. And you see the natural language assertion that I was saying. They have all these keywords that I'm using. And this is how you use these to test your APIs out. Okay, I'm following this over here. So if you see this thing, there's a and. So what I'm saying is that the response body should be an array. Put this in. Okay, the first line number 30, I was making sure there's no error. Line number 32, I am saying my response status should be 200. Line number 34 is interesting because now I'm checking my result. I'm saying that whatever, if for my test to be successful, I should get a response body. It should be an array. Why it should be an array? Because my API examples get should return me a list of this thing, list of rows, these two rows. Okay, so it's an array. Now, and what's the length of the array? How many should I be getting back if it is successful? How many rows should I be getting back? 2. Yep. So what I can do is I can take this test a little bit further and then say that has length of 2. Okay. So my response body is going to be a list, which is going to be an array, and it has a length of 2. If it is not, this test should fail and stop over here. Okay. Let's see. Before I write any more tests, let's see. This is done. The last thing is not this done. Okay, so when you're testing your using your chai HTTP, the last thing is they're saying in the documentation that when you are done with all your functions over here, all your test case, at the end, call the function done. This is part of the chai HTTP, and what it does is this is required for your async test. Because we are doing our async test, it says that call the function called done in the end. What chai HTTP basically is doing is converting your async methods into a sync method, right? It's making sure that all of this runs line by line, right? You know, async method, they don't run by line, but chai HTTP, what it does, it kind of converts your method into sync call. And to make sure that it is done, this is what you do. You put it at the end of the statement, you just call this function so that it kind of knows that all your async tests have been completed. Let me make sure if it's in the right place. It should be inside this thing. Let me move this out. Should be inside my request. Okay. Expect include and then done. Trying to make sure I have all my expect this. Okay. All right, so this is how you write test for your get methods. All right. Hopefully I have everything done. Let's go ahead and run this and see if it's successful. Let's see. CD04 installed. What I'm going to do is first I'm going to run this my server to make sure. Okay, looks good. It is listening, so I don't have any errors over there. npm run test. Okay, let's go back and see. These are my linters. It's okay. I don't care about my linters right now. That's my tests. Delete, replace before each, blah blah blah. That's okay. Let's see. So it won't let me get past until I fix those linting errors. What was that? Yeah. Let me see one thing real quick. Projects. What was that? Ignored in my package.json?
No, it's like in the ES.
Yeah. Oh, let me try this real quick and see if I can this. Oh. How do I comment this? Oh, yeah, this should work. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Let's see if this helps. Nope. Oh, this one helped because I'm not even using my parse.json file. Let me think. How did I fix it? What was your suggestion, Aaron? What were you saying?
We're just trying to run that without in the window, right?
Yeah.
You can ignore it in you open up the folder structure.
My folder structure?
Yeah, there is a dot ELS ignore.
Mm-hmm.
That one, you just click the file and then you can ignore that one.
Oh, I put my example.js. Will it pick it up from here, or do I need to go in my test folder? I need to go in my test folder. Test. Ah, thank you. There we go.
Now that's not managed, but
yeah, we'll fix that. Yeah. Yep. Thank you. So this way I was able. So this is how you write the get test, and if you see, I'm able to successfully complete my test, and I will upload. Go ahead and upload this, and you guys can use the same convention in your API. All you're changing is the name, of course, and whatever your database looks like. But other than that, if you guys are using the boilerplate code, it should be, there shouldn't be any more changes. And if you're not using, still you can use the same unit testing. Okay? Any questions on this? Okay. Now, let me quickly show you. Yes.
How would get request you do a rec or request body rather than response?
Say that again.
That would get request if I didn't do rec dot body, not a list dot body.
I'm trying to think back. Okay, get response request. Right. Right. So in your unit test, what you are saying is that the response should be that when you call this, your response should be something this. So in the unit test, kind of what you're kind of the opposite. Well, it's not exactly opposite, but you are saying is when I call this, so you're actually calling this in your unit test and you're expecting some kind of response back. Yeah, in your code, in your API, you won't do this because somebody else is going to call and they're going to get a response back. So in your unit test, what you are saying is when somebody calls this, my response should be whatever this should be my response. This is my expected response. That's what you're saying. That's why it's responsible. And when you make a get call, everything is in your response. When you make a post call, it comes in your request body. Okay? The only thing is I'll upload the post one also. There shouldn't be any. The only difference between this and post is, let's see if there's a, it's the same setup. Instead of get, you are just doing post. Okay, so very similar. It's yeah, in this case it's a request body because you're sending something. So remember, post is you're trying to insert something, you are sending your data in. So in your unit test you are saying this is my request body and it should come back to this. Okay, it's very similar to your get. All right. If you want, I can go through this, but it's very similar. I can do a live coding for post also, but it's very similar. All you can see is you're changing your post. Now there are methods for pull and delete also. All right, I'll send you a link. It's kind of good overview, and but I would like you guys to try if you guys are doing the. I'll upload this post and get. You can use the code directly, but if you want, try the pull and delete on your own. Setup is very similar. You're just changing your post and get to a pull, delete, those two also. Okay, give it a try. I'll post the link also. It kind of shows you how to use it, but use those two functions also. All right. Try to incorporate at least one unit test. Yes.
Just one demonstration on how you execute that.
How you exceeded what?
You have to run the server first, and then you can run your test, right?
Oh no. You don't have to run your server. I ran my server to see that if there was any compilation error or something, if my setup was. You don't have to run your. All you have to do is do npm run test. Yeah, it will start your server. And why is it starting all that stuff? Because in your in my example.test, well, I should name this to example.get.test. All this thing over here requires server and starting all this thing. So it kind of, what it does is try HTTP, it kind of mocks the server for you and it will start its own and do it. Okay, it's not starting a real server. It's not going to insert a real row in your database. All of this should be mocked up. All right. Okay, so you don't have to start the server. I did it because I wanted to make sure that my code was correct or there wasn't any issue in whatever my configuration was. All right. Any other questions? All right, so you guys have 1.5 hours. You guys can work on your project or let me know if there's any questions. I can go through the testing framework again or if there are any other questions that you want me to discuss. So today, after this, yeah, you guys can go ahead and work on your projects until 9:30. There's no class on Thursday, Saturday, so I'll see you guys on Tuesday. Remember Tuesday, the next Thursday is the demo day, so you guys should be kind of wrapped up. On Tuesday, there's not a lot to cover on Tuesday. The most is I'll ask you guys to work on your presentations on Tuesday. Other than that, it's all project work. Thursday, you guys are presenting. Yes. All right. So next Thursday, you guys are presenting. Again, this is week 17. All right. So I think there are a total of 23 and 24 project work. Again, project 3. Just giving you a heads up. So 18, 19, 20, and 21 are going to be lessons, and we are going to look at your favorite MongoDB, React, and all that stuff, right? Last 3 weeks. Close, yes, getting there, yeah. My advice, if you guys are looking for interviews, you guys should start applying, whoever of you are interested, because a lot of questions that come across are usually based off JavaScript, because when you're applying for a full stack, the focus usually, what I've seen, they ask you a more JavaScript question because that's the foundation. So JavaScript first, then they will kind of do a deep dive into Node.js. Then it comes to React or Angular. But they kind of, if you have a rough idea about React, you can start reading React documentation. If you guys want to, I think you guys are ready for, if you guys are comfortable with JavaScript and Node.js, if you read the React documentation, it's kind of should seem familiar because the code is kind of similar to JavaScript. Of course, they have their own syntaxes, but should be able to understand what's going on. But yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions, you need any help, interview practice, or any interview questions. Let me know. But yeah, if you guys are interested, go ahead and start applying and see what's out there and get a heads up. 17 is like 5 weeks now. 5 more weeks. That's it. And 23 and 24 are projects, so basically there's no like a set lesson. But if you guys want me to cover anything at 23 or 24, let me know. We can look into some of the topics or repeat it. We'll see when we get there. All right. That's all from my side. I'll see you guys on next Tuesday. Yes. Well, yeah, those are okay. Yeah. And the reason is usually, as I said, if you're working, you put your project on your like in a job. In this case, for you as your so once you get to your project 3, if you want to strike off the initial projects, the minimal one, that's fine, because you want to focus on the 3 projects more of the React assignment activities that you have done. So you might want to strike off the initial ones, depending on if it's becoming critical. So you might want to strike off the initial ones. Just pick your best ones, so then you can really talk about it. Yes.
I feel like I'm completely lost now on the game. I feel like I have all that. I know you get.
Yes.
I'm still doing a reds?
No. So what are you doing in your get? You are getting something, right?
Why was the request? Now you're requesting.
So you do a. Now this is the English request. It doesn't have to do anything else. Your client or your browser makes a request, right? Request to your get. Okay. Now what should get do? Get should respond. Okay. Why it should respond? Because it's getting the data from your database and then responding to something. So that's why your REST should have the data. Okay. Again, from your browser, you're making a request to get, and what are you requesting? You're requesting some data, right? Because it's the get, it should return your data. So in your get, your response should be some data, because that's your response. You are sending some data back.
So then why in the function for a get request do you have the anonymous function? You have the parameters request and res.
Right. So if you look into the request documentation, they have a lot more functions. I think the status and all that stuff that you might be checking. Especially, I think it comes into like something called cross domain, something. So that's where the request will be used. Right now in your get, you can ignore it because you're not actually using it. But I would recommend look at what the request object has. You might not be able to use it right now, but it should be there.
So then in a post,
so are we good on this one? Then we'll go to the post one.
I think so.
Okay, now let's look at the post one. So what should happen in your post one? What are you doing in your post with respect to your database? Requesting a change. You are inserting. Are you getting something from your database? No, you are actually pushing something in it. You are inserting data, right? And what data are you inserting? The data that is coming from here.
So it should be exports dot
data will come from your browser or your client, and it should go in over here. Now, what object should have all your data? It should be in your request. It shouldn't be in your response because you are not sending anything. You are not responding. You are getting everything in your request, and your request has all the data.
So is there extra steps in a post then?
There's extra steps. Yeah, you have to like dot body or something. You have to put some data over here.
So like on my GET request, I have the then anonymous function. I have the results or whatever. In this case, I have db food. And then after that, I have response.json, and then those results are in this case db food.
Yep.
Now, in a post, as of right now, I have that anonymous function again with the results, db food.
Yes.
But then I'm doing a request .json for the results.
No, it should still be response or rest.json.
I thought I wasn't asking for a rest.json for a post.
Right. So, what does res.json has? What's the response.json? Right. And response is always going back.
So I don't even need a response.
You don't need it, but why do we put it in the post? We put it in the post because it's kind of a way to tell your client that you have successfully inserted the data. So what you do is you put your data that you inserted successfully in your res.json when you respond. This is a way so that you can tell your client that this operation was successful.
So we would have the res.json and request.body.
Request.body, yes. Request.body, you're going to extract this information out, insert in your database. If it is successful, then only you do this.
So I would do the request.body first.
Yeah, request.body. Then you're going to extract.
Or is that before the then function?
No, inside the then function. All of this is inside the then function.
Because I know it says like create request.body. These were like kind of examples that I just filled in with our database and stuff.
Oh, okay. So this is the. I thought this is yeah, inside the then function.
So I would have.
Yeah, that's weird. It worked here.
Yeah, this is the, what are you now doing?
I was asking if I had to do rec.body.
Yeah, you always do it.
That's what I was saying, because it's not in the then function.
Again,
oh, no,
this is like you have like new spaces.
So the only thing I have in the then function again is the res.json.
Yeah, and why do you have it? You don't have it. You don't need to have it. The reason you have it is because you are saying when you inserted in your database it was successful. So that's why you are saying, oh, I inserted this thing into the database. That's why you have it. Again, you don't need this, but you absolutely need this in the GET. This is a requirement.
Otherwise, so I don't technically need anything in the then function.
Now, or you can say you can even say res.json and pass in a string saying success.
So it doesn't have to give you back all the data. It just
Yeah,
lets you know that it came
but
back.
by convention we do it so that it's kind of. But again, get absolutely necessary because you are getting something.
Then finally, with this whole testing stuff,
Mhm.
to me it just seems really tedious. Like you're
Yes.
doing all this extra work for
It
one
is tedious.
function. It took us an hour to run a test for one function. I mean, I get that you're going slowly to show an example, but I mean, I'm imagining one app that there's thousands of functions.
Yes.
I guess I don't see the point.
No, if you write the test when you have 1,000 modules, then yes, of course it's tedious. But if you start with your one module and write your test, then by the time you get to 1,000, you should have 1,000 tests. You should be writing it at the same time.
Right. I mean, you're not going to go back and
But yes, it is extra time. But you will see that it will prevent you from running into all kinds of issues. Again, I was of the same mindset.
I guess the way I'm confused is now we're not actually using the code we're just using pseudocode.
Kind of, yeah.
So how does it help our real code?
You're testing your real code, right? So what is not real over here? my data is mocked up, but my columns and these are all real. If none of these match, my test should fail. If my this database doesn't have these columns, my test should fail. Or if I'm not getting 2 rows back, if I'm getting 1 back, um, instead of 2, if I'm getting 1 back for some reason, that should fail.
So is it a way of kind of debugging, or is
Right,
it
exactly.
proactively debugging basically?
And again, it's kind of hard to see the value if somebody shows you, but once you kind of get into the habit of it, and you will definitely come across a code that you write, and when you run your test, you'll be like, oh, okay, this is the issue with this. Maybe there's a typo over here, right? Examples, you put example. It's kind of that's one thing, or something over the course of time you run into that you will see the benefit of unit tests. So the unit test kind of stops us doing something silly beforehand before we find it out in a different way on a different environment. Give it a try. Write a few unit tests and see how it benefits you. But again, out there in the industry, it's kind of becoming a very strict standard, and expectation is you write your unit test or TDD and all that stuff.
I'm just thinking of like how long it's taking me to finish my apps now and how close I'm getting. Usually I'm not even finishing. I can only imagine if I'm doing this for every single function.
Yes. And what we do is when we plan in my real job, we actually include time for writing these test cases. So we ask for more time because we need to write it, and everybody's fine.
Because it's kind of
as you were saying, it's kind of tedious, and it's going to take more time. Yes, for end success result. So kind of you get extra time for that. So did you apply somewhere? I know you were looking somewhere, right? Oh, hold on, let me